Okay, we'll go through this scene and then I think we'll call it a day. Okay, so now Pinocchio's gone free. He's been united with his conscience. He's learned a couple of lessons. Don't be an actor and don't lie. And those things are quite similar, right? And especially once you're caught in your actor trap, don't lie to get out, because that will just make it worse. So that's the first of his trials, his moral trials on the road to becoming real. All right, now here we're in a different place. We're at this, I think it's called the Red Lobster Inn, and it's a shadowy place, right? And it's kind of cave-like, so it's like it's an underground entrance to somewhere that's not good. And so, and it's a foggy night, and you can't really see, so everything's murky and gloomy there. And so inside, we see the coachman and the fox and the cat. And the coachman's a bad guy. He's that mask that we saw. First of all, he's the archetype of that mask that was judgmental about Pinocchio having a voice. And it's like, one of the things Jung said about the shadow, and this is, I would say, one of the primary impediments to enlightenment, is that if you start looking at your motives for misbehaving, and I mean by that something very specific. I mean, I don't mean that you're misbehaving by someone else's standards. I don't mean that. I mean, when you know by your own standards that you're doing something that's devious or malevolent or underhanded, you know it, and you still do it. So it's your own judgment you're bringing to bear on yourself. If you look at why you're doing that, the longer you look at it, the deeper a hole you dig. And so this is the motif of Dante's Inferno, fundamentally. So Dante's Inferno is a story about, I can't remember his name, unfortunately. Might be Dante, in fact, although I don't remember. He's led into hell by Virgil, who's an ancient philosopher, thinker. And hell has levels, and so the outer level is, and this is a Christianized version of hell, because there's hells of all sorts, but this is a Christianized version. And so on the outermost levels of hell, which is sort of like normal life, are the ancient philosophers, and they're still in hell because they weren't Christian, but it's kind of like, it's like cheap motel hell instead of the full pit thing, you know. And so then Dante goes deeper and deeper into hell until he gets right to the bottom of it. And it's been a while since I read it, but if I remember correctly, Satan himself is encased in ice at the bottom of hell, surrounded by people who betray others. And so Dante's notion was that the worst of all possible violations of moral behavior was betrayal, and that they're in the deepest levels of hell. And I really like that idea. I think it's true, because if you trust me, then you're manifesting the necessary courage that puts someone through life. You know, if you're smart, you don't trust me because you're naive. You trust me knowing that I'm full of snakes and so are you, but maybe we could cooperate and move things along nicely, you know, and we could reduce each other to our word, and we could cooperate. But you're awake, you know, and then I betray that, then I'm undermining your necessary faith in life and humanity. And you can really hurt someone that way. Like, sometimes it's self-betrayal, but you can really do someone in that. We can really traumatize them, so that they can't recover. And so it's a really terrible thing to do to someone. And maybe it's the worst thing, and that was Dante's idea. And it's tied in. That makes very interesting reading if you read it at the same time as Milton's Paradise Lost, because those are metaphysical explorations. This is what they are. They're metaphysical explorations of the terrible places you can end up, and that people do end up. And also a metaphysical explanation of what spirit takes you there. So, because you might ask, well, why do you betray someone? And that is a deep question. And so you'll have your specific reasons, but under that there'll be some other reasons, and under that there'll be some other reasons, and under that there'll be some other reasons. And if you go all the way to the bottom, you come up with the ultimate reasons why you betrayed someone. And when you look at that, that will not be pretty. That's when your proclivity for evil, let's say, unites with the general human proclivity for evil, and you discover just exactly what you're capable of. And so Jung's notion was that, well, that was a full encounter with the shadow, which is, I suppose, partly what this course is about, because one of the things that I believe I told you at the beginning was that I was going to try to help you understand how it might be that you could be an Auschwitz guard. And to really understand that, that's a horrifying thing to understand. But I'll tell you, If you want to grow some teeth, that's a really good thing to understand. So we were talking about your capacity to negotiate before. Like if you aren't a monster, you cannot negotiate. But if you've got that under control, then you don't have to be a monster. It's really paradoxical. So if you're just naive, well, you end up in jail and a marionette master has control over you. That's not helpful. So that's not good. That just means you're useless and you can be manipulated. You won't go out of your way to be malevolent, but it's mostly because you just don't have the skills, the organizational skills, or even the depth to do that. You know, you're good because you're harmless. That's not good. That's easily manipulated. And so you think, well, how do you get out of that? Well, partly you watch people because you know what they're like, because you know what you're like, but you also know what you could do and would do if you were pushed. And so you don't have to show much of that when you're negotiating with someone for them to take you really seriously. So it's a strange thing, you know, but one of the things Jung pointed out too was that what you most need to know will be found where you least want to look. And that's because you haven't already looked there. And so it's a little different for everyone, right? Because your particular place you don't want to look isn't going to be the same as your place. But you're going to have a place you don't want to look. And what you haven't discovered, that's where it is. And so that's all partly going to be discovered by you looking at what you're capable of, what you're truly capable of. And, you know, people, especially on the compassionate end, think, well, no, I could never be like brutal like that. And that could be true, but you can kill people with compassion, no problem. That's the Freudian Oedipal situation. So think about working in a nursing home. So there's actually a rule of thumb, which I also use to guide my interactions with children and also with my clients, and I would say with people in general. Do not do anything for anyone that they can do themselves. All you do is steal, you just steal it from them. So imagine you're working with really elderly people, you know, they have Alzheimer's. It's like really easy to do things for them because, well, it isn't, because it's really a hard job. But it might be easier to do something for them than to let them struggle through it. But you just speed their demise, right, by taking away the last vestiges of their independence. And you do the same thing with kids. It's like, struggle through it, man. Did you ever see My Left Foot? That's a great movie. It's about this author whose name escapes me at the moment. Brilliant. It's a brilliant movie. And the person who played the part, it's Daniel Day-Lewis. I think he won an Academy Award for it. But it's about this author in Ireland who was, I think he had cerebral palsy. And all he could really do was use his left foot. That was it. The rest of him was pretty spastic and not controllable. But he was there. He was very intelligent and he was with it. And his dad would not help him. He had to drag himself up the damn stairs with his left foot. He just would not help him. And what happened was he learned how to live. You know, he could function. And the book, which is called My Left Foot, and the movie does a lovely job of laying that out. But you have to be one hard-hearted son of a bitch to let your son crawl up the stairs with his left foot over and over. You think about that. But what's the alternative? You know, if he would have been, and of course he lays this out in the book, if he would have been catered to, he would have ended up just like you'd expect someone who was always catered to. So it's a very nice lesson in the triumph of fostering independence over too casual compassion. That's what I would say. Well, so you look at the coachman here. Kind of looks like a demented Santa Claus, you know. He doesn't have a beard, but it's a nice touch on the animator's part. He's even got the pipe and the red suit. And so he's listening to the fox and the cat brag about how much money they made selling Pinocchio to the puppet master and how evil and terrible they are. And they're bragging away, and he's the real thing, hey? He's the real thing. And he can see through their little petty, narcissistic, grandiose tales of quasi-criminality and has nothing but contempt for it. And you can see that in his facial expressions. Like he's sitting back a bit thinking, keep talking, bucko. Pretty soon I'm going to have you right where I want you. And so the fox and the cat are drinking beer and smoking cigarettes and talking about how evil they are and bragging about how they got one over on like a 4-year-old. Real impressive guys. Real impressive. And the coachman is thinking up his own nefarious schemes right now for what he might do with that puppet if he got his hands on him. And so that's when he reveals himself, right? So what you see, filmmakers just do it for a second. And that's an archetypal trip. It's like, you've got the fox and the cat, they're sort of petty examples of criminality and evil. And then you've got the coachman, and he's the real thing, but he's not really shown anybody who he is. And then at one scene in the bar, he lets his guard down and he lets them see what he's really like. And so you see this all teeth and predatory eyes and glee all at the same time, right? That's a bad combination. I'm going to eat you, and it's going to make me very happy. That's insanity. You do not want to see that look on someone's face. And so that's the look. And the fox is traumatized by that. He just, like, he thinks he's a bad guy. And he's not. He just can't be a good guy. He hasn't got the talent to be a bad guy. So, and then he's talking to the coachman and bragging, and the coachman's had enough of it and shows his real face. And it's like, that's not good. The fox gets a real glimpse into hell, and that just terrifies him. Like he's, and then the coachman, the other thing the coachman does is reveal his plans. And his plans are to kidnap Pinocchio along with a bunch of other boys and to take them to this place called Pleasure Island. And the fox knows what's going on there. And so it's the foreshadowing of the next stage of the adventure. And so after the fox and the cat are terrified, the coachman, who takes you along with him, has a little chat with them, and they describe exactly what they're going to do next. And the fox and the cat know perfectly well that they're over their head, but at this point in their misadventures, there's no pulling back.